Hey, good morning and welcome to episode 59 of Talking to Artists. So today I'm very excited to talk to Joan Spence, who runs Spence Gallery. They just have a new location, so I'm sure she'll talk a bit about that. But a couple of pieces of news first, just for people who are looking, the Toronto Outdoor Art Fair is still online. And so I still have I basically had new pieces for that show and that collection, so you can check those out. The link is in my bio. And on the 17th, I'm doing a one-day show in Stouffville, so which I'm really looking forward to. It's basically a bunch of people from the Artist Network, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun. It's just one day, but up in Stouffville, so hopefully you can join us for that too. So I'm going to actually just go right in, and looks like Joan is here. Is she? She's not quite here yet. Nope. Okay, so I'm going to wait for Joan to come on board. I know that she was having a couple of technology challenges, as we all are. So anyway, hopefully it'll be solved. So I'm, as you can see, I'm probably back at the studio at the cottage now, which has been great. Update, the caterpillars are gone, so pretty excited about that. And so really starting to get back into the groove of doing outdoor shows again. And it's weird. It's great, and I'm loving it, but it's very strange that as an extrovert, I'm finding that I'm kind of out of practice talking to people. And at the end of the day, I'm pretty tired. But it's actually been really wonderful, and I really am very appreciative of the people that kind of came out to these outdoor shows, and who are also still supporting artists online. So, of course, even though we haven't been able to show our work, and the galleries haven't really been able to show our work for a long time, artists are still producing, and we're still creating amazing work. So it's really gratifying when people choose to take those home, and so that's kind of what we're all looking to do. So I'm just going to see whether or not Joan has joined us yet. It doesn't look like she has, so that's fine. We'll just wait for a bit, and I will babble on for a bunch more things. So the other thing I'm working on right now, which hopefully you guys can help me with, is, as you know, obviously I do my Talking to Artists, and I have actually hired somebody now, Jasmine, to take the audio and amplify it and normalize it and stuff to be able to post on Spotify. So I'm starting to do 2 or 3 uploads onto Spotify, so that you can listen to it actually through any of your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcasts. So that will be kind of exciting. I just uploaded the one for Lisa Hickey, and I believe Kat Stambolic is next. So I know I'm about a year behind, but I'm truly working on trying to get that updated. The other thing I'm working on right now is actually doing a series of videos that are really designed for collectors. So I've done a couple on, things that you should, ask artists if you're at an outdoor show, how to approach commissions, things like that. So for the collectors out there, or even for artists who have run into a lot of questions that collectors ask, let me know what those are. And I'd love to do kind of a couple of very short, like 10-minute videos about that too. So kind of looking forward to doing that. All right, so I'm just going to check again. See if Joan's online. Nope, doesn't seem to be, but we will be patient. And what else? What am I working on? Well, I'm getting excited. I'm going to be doing Art San Diego this year, not till October, which is great because it gives me some time to work on some things, as well as a show in Washington. But the show I'm really excited about, which I'm working on right now, is one I'm doing with my sister, Helen Utzel, at the Leslie Grove Gallery in September. So it starts in the middle of September. She's going to come down from Vancouver, so I'm so excited to see her because it's been probably 2 years now, so that would be great to see her. And the show is called My Family Garden, and it really came from the fact that, as you know, Helen and I are both professional artists. Our grandmother was an artist. We were raised, obviously, in a household of artists with a lot of art. But also it came from the fact that our inspiration is very much nature and nurturing kind of the garden, not only the physical garden of flowers and plants and being at the cottage, but also kind of that emotional garden of family and sisterhood and kind of working together to produce something. So we're kind of, all of the pieces are going to be 60 inches tall. It's going to look like almost like you're standing inside the gallery looking out into this window of flowers and nature and vegetation and trees and stuff of our family garden. So we're really excited to put that together, and we're working right now obviously remotely, to to try and figure out different colors and our color palettes. And our colors are fairly similar, but we use them quite differently. So it'll be really so fabulous to see them all together in one garden. So pretty psyched about that. So let me just do another quick chat. Check. No, I don't see Joan. So I'm not sure whether or not she had some challenges getting on board, or something else. You never know. Sometimes these things happen. I've had times when you think everything's organized and the technology's all good, and then all of a sudden, your Instagram's not updated, or something happens, or something changes, or your phone dies, or whatever. Right? As we know, we've had some issues with that before. Hence, some of the talking to artists that didn't actually make it to my YouTube channel because they were very chopped up in 2 or 3 different sections. But I'm going to be working on that. Well, does anybody have any questions? Because I'm running out of stuff to talk about. I wasn't really preparing to have a long monologue. I don't know. But thanks everyone for joining us. So I can see Mary and Carvos has joined us. So I just saw that your work you got some great work on the Toronto Outdoor as well. A number of us who are here also in the Toronto Outdoor. So hoping that will kind of ramp up this week, and hopefully we'll see some more traffic, which will be good. I don't know. I'm running out of things to talk about, so we might have to change it, unless anybody would like to join my call. Does anybody have anything to say? Mary, I know I've invited you a number of times, but anybody want to talk about anything? Ask any questions? I don't know. So I'm thinking that she may have run into, hi, how are you finding being back in art events in person? I'm finding it really great. It's very exhilarating. I have to stop myself from just like blah, 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 talking for like ever, because obviously everybody's kind of it's a weird situation, I think, where people are kind of out of practice talking to people they don't know. But it's also so refreshing to talk to people that you don't know, and you get different stories and different ideas. So I did find it really wonderful. I'm really lucky to be living in Toronto, where the shows were, where almost everybody has at least had one vaccination. Most people are double vaxxed, so as am I. So that actually it's amazing how that knowledge kind of creates a little bit, takes away a lot of the anxiety of doing these outdoor shows. Some of it was just, I hadn't seen my work all put together in one place for so long, especially now having kind of 3 studios. So the work is very much split up, and much of it is wrapped, and it's kind of, I've got this is the stuff for Toronto Outdoor, which is virtual. So I'm going to wrap it all and put it in that corner. So it was really great to be able to see everything all up together. And just to hear people's feedback of the work. I had a number of people who throughout COVID had bought commissions, and so they came and talked about it, and that was really wonderful. Are collectors equally excited? Absolutely. I think that was probably one of the biggest things that I found too, was that there are a lot of collectors who kind of discovered me online, and so they can see the work online, but they haven't actually seen it in person. And so it's very different to see the work in person and to get the energy from the work that I just don't think that you can communicate online as much as you try really hard. So I think that was something that collectors were really interested in. I think a lot of collectors were pretty happy to just come and share pictures of, where they'd hung the work and what they'd done with it and how it had helped them get through some of these dark times, which was really great. Other people are not necessarily at the point where they are able to afford original art, but I think that they're really excited to come out to these shows, to talk to the artists, to build some relationships, to see the work in real life, and start to try and figure out what their own collector kind of biases or what their inspiration is going to be for their own collection. So I think that's been really, really great too. The feedback is fabulous. I'd have to say that I really enjoyed that part of it a lot. And here we have Spence Gallery. So I'm going to see if we can invite her. And thank you for people. I can talk a little bit about the Stouffville show. At the end, it's the 17th of, so it's Saturday the 17th of July, my sister's birthday. And and so we're looking at sort of doing that show. I think there's Marjolin in it, Carolyn, Lady Liarn, Angela Lane. I know I'm forgetting people, but a bunch of people that are from the Artist Network, so that will be fun too. So, hello.
Hi. Am I the wrong way?
You're sideways.
I'm sideways.
You're very eclectic.
I can fix that, I think. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. I think it's just changing your phone.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I did half a session once sideways because I heard that with Instagram you actually could do it sideways, but then when I tried, it didn't really work. Yep, that's good. That works.
Yeah.
If you can
get it. I can't get it in my little stand here now. Yeah.
Oh, that sucks.
I
know. Don't you just love technology?
I know. Anyway, I will just put it here and we'll figure it out, I think.
Does that work?
No. Well, no. It is not working. That's okay. We'll figure it out at some point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm great. How are you?
Thursday.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear you.
I said, how are you on a rainy Thursday?
I know, yeah, it's so cold. I'm at the cottage, and I'm like, I had to wear, I've got an undershirt, a t-shirt, and a sweater on with socks. I'm like,
yeah,
that's crazy for July. Yeah.
I know.
I walked into my studio today, and it was like 17 degrees. I'm like, holy cow. It's like my paints are thick. That's just weird. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, it's wet here, and wet and quiet, it seems, really quiet. No one's outside because it's raining, and they think it's another season. So
it does feel like that. I know. Yeah, and it's funny, too, because, I'm at the cottage, and because the caterpillars have eaten all the leaves off the trees, it sort of feels like that weird fall, where you're kind of starting to lose the tree coverage, and it's cold, and it's rainy, and
yeah,
I don't know. Oh, yeah, I can see outside. So you're in your new space now.
I'm in my new space on Harvard Street, and it's supposed to be, it is the space is lovely, and the location's lovely, but the liveliness of the neighborhood, the neighborhood comes alive when the university is open, because it's right beside the university. And so with university closed, it's a bit quieter than I guess it would be under normal circumstances. But it's still like there are lots of restaurants in the neighborhood. So I'm on a strip where there are about 4 restaurants or so that have their patios open in the evening. So that brings a bit of life. It brings a bit of life in the evening hours. Yeah.
Well, and I imagine, too, that people are still a little bit tentative. Like, I think that what I'm seeing is that people are excited about the opportunity to go out and do stuff because they're double vaxxed, but there's still a lot of nervousness. I was even talking to my mom, and she's been double vaxxed now for a while, and yet she's still nervous to go out and do things. And it's, I think, just because you're still out of practice.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you don't know what to do really with yourself when you're out. You're like, oh my God, that looks like a crowd of people. Should I walk away from them?
I know, it still seems so weird. It's like, why aren't they wearing masks? I'm still watching movies too, and I think, you guys are too close.
Yeah.
So I'd love to talk to you about, so I read that, first of all, I think it's very interesting how little information there is about you out there.
You mean about me? Personally?
Yeah, personally. So,
well, that's because I'm not a social media person generally. I'm doing this because it's all in the name of work. I'm here to serve artists. And
I'm so glad you did, because I know I did push a little bit, so I apologize for that.
That's okay. Yeah.
So I understand you started in 2005, so you've been doing this for quite a long time.
2005, I started, but the story, let it be known that when I started, it was sort of a part-time gallery for, I would say, for about maybe 12 years. It was variations of part-time, from very part-time to close to full-time, but not really full-time. Because when I started, I actually had a full-time job. So that meant it had to be part-time. And because of the gallery was in Mirvish Village at the time, and I don't know if you're familiar with Mirvish Village at all.
Absolutely, great there, great area.
Yeah, but it was also a street that actually came alive in the evenings and on weekends. So to a certain extent, it sort of served. It served me well in that I was able to just sort of do opening on evenings and on weekends.
Oh, right. And of course.
Yeah, and that sort of worked well for a while. That sort of worked well. So we would have, I would go to work, and then at the end of the day, I would open the gallery up, and sometimes we'd have events and openings. Those were the days when we had openings all the time, and that was really good.
Yeah.
And so it was a great neighborhood to be in. You were sort of among and between a lot of artists and also other galleries. So it was a great location. Yeah. And I would say that some of the artists that I sort of added to the gallery came as a result of being in that neighborhood. So that was a good thing, yeah.
And so I understand you've got a degree in social work and social policy. So how do you transition that into kind of having now a gallery full time? It seems like kind of a interesting change.
Yeah. So, my first life was definitely in the sort of social policy world, doing program development and stuff, worked internationally. And there was a point, I guess when I started the gallery, I had, even though I worked in the same area for a long time, I always changed jobs. And as I said, I even worked internationally. I was doing volunteer work internationally, but I was overseas for a couple of years in Kenya. And then I came back and I was working. And it was around that time when I probably would have changed jobs that I then started the gallery. But I actually didn't want to change jobs because it was at that age where you're like, I really should keep a job. You should keep a job.
Yeah, the practical versus what you really want to do.
I know, exactly. And art came to me because I had... I'd always loved art, and I was always sort of fascinated with the whole creative process. And I think fascinated with creativity because I don't really have that. That's not an aspect of me. There's no creativity happening here. And so I have a great deal of respect and regard for creative people. And I would go out to lots of art events and arts and culture events, and at the time, Toronto was very different. Like 2005, it felt very different from the way it does now in terms of the art world. Because I did notice that the art scene was very sort of homogeneous.
Yeah, and I think we're still struggling with that as an industry. It still tends to be pretty white.
Yeah. And but I knew that there were a lot of great artists who had their backgrounds was from elsewhere, but they were here, they were practicing artists, they were doing great art, but at the same time, they weren't necessarily as present, they weren't represented as well. And I thought, and also at the same time, galleries were, and they, a bit more maybe stuffy is the word, and sort of intimidating. And I sort of envisioned this gallery where, people who had great art but weren't necessarily represented in other spaces could show their art, and also where anyone could come in and actually just enjoy art. And they, whether they were buying or not, but that they could come and still visually enjoy the art, be with other people who like art, and not feel that they're imposing in a space.
Yeah, I love that. I love that that kind of philosophy you seem to have of this kind of inclusivity versus exclusivity, like with your artists as well as with it sounds like the buying public, like just breaking down a lot of those barriers and allowing people to kind of enjoy it for what it is, as opposed to feeling like you have to know about art before you can go into an art gallery.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And because yes, an art gallery is where you can actually discover You can discover the art, and you can grow to love art in an art gallery. And, I always say to people, like, your first step towards, someone says, oh, well, I've never bought art before. And your first step is just looking at it, just being with it, just seeing it, and, feeling see how you feel about the art per se.
Well, and I was talking about it. I was just talking about that a little bit, because we were talking about kind of doing outdoor shows again, and the fact that it's a great opportunity for collectors to kind of try and figure out what their own collection is and what their own passions are and what their own color palette is, and you can only do that by going and seeing lots of art.
Exactly. And so at the time, when I started, and we would have events and had music sometimes, and it seems like such a long time ago, actually.
I know, it's like this fantasy dream from years ago.
I know. And it actually is just around the corner in a way, like it's really close to here, which is one of the reasons why coming back here was just so amazing to get this space, because I'd actually sort of thought ever since leaving Mirvish Village, it's like, oh, I want to be back in that neighborhood. And so it's actually quite good to be back here. But yeah, so at that time, we would have events and have a very eclectic, interesting group that you wouldn't normally see going to art gallery events. So that was something to be proud of, because I thought, okay, well, at least there's an aspect of that that's being achieved, where people are actually, a lot of different kinds of people are coming to see art and to be with art and be with artists and stuff. So, so that, I think, if nothing else, that was like a great thing to have accomplished at that time. And I hope that here on Harvard Street, we'll be able to get back to, that kind of thing in the future. That this space will.
I'm sure you will. Yeah, it's funny because I think I came across you first through Solomon Cami, because we were in Color Shift Art Collective together, and I'm just thinking that must have been about 10 years ago. So he probably must have been one of your kind of original artists within your kind of stable.
Because Solomon had his studio in Mirvish Village. He was actually on the same
that's
street.
right.
Yeah. So that's how I came to know Solomon and how he came to be part of the gallery, because it was sort of like this, grouping, like collective of people, just sort of spaces. People were moving between spaces and doing different things together. And you discover a lot in that, in that regard, when you're sort of in a space where people are close together and able to sort of make connections in a very casual way.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really a nice way of doing it. Like really kind of that community, it's so much better in person. And this is what we've really missed, in the last couple of years, I think, having to be forced to be online.
Yeah.
So at what point did you kind of decide then, this is something, it's interesting because there's quite a huge leap to go from, I really love art, to I'm going to have an art gallery part-time, to I'm going to just kind of ditch the old job and kind of go into this full-time. Was there something specific that made you kind of do that, or did you kind of always feel that was going to be part your path?
Okay, so even though I'm a planner, because my formal job was always about planning and looking ahead, and that's what you do with policies and programs and stuff. Right. I had a plan for the gallery, but I didn't have I wasn't thinking 16 years on. Do you know what I mean? Like I literally was thinking, a few years at a time. And to a certain extent, the path, I was sort of pulled by the sort of natural occurrence of things, like the evolution of the gallery itself, rather than leading the evolution. I almost sort of followed the evolution of the gallery. So while I started, and I was actually, I should mention that on Markham Street, I was in 3 locations on Markham Street. Wow. So first I was in a really small spot where I started, and that was, in my mind, that was supposed to be temporary. Like that was going to be just something I did for a little while. And then when I was about to lose that spot, I realized that I actually wanted to keep doing this. So that's how I mean, cool. In terms of the gallery sort of evolving and I'm sort of following, because I was like, oh, I'm losing this. I can't lose this. I don't want to lose this spot. I want another. I want to keep going. And so I kept going, and something similar happened with the other. Actually, no, with the other spot, I was like, oh, I need something bigger, because this smaller space is not serving the gallery that well. Like I wasn't able to do what I wanted to do. So that's how I sort of ended up in a bigger space. And then once you're in a bigger space, you're like, oh, well, now I'm committed. You know,
yeah. You
like,
feed the monster.
Yeah. I know, exactly. And then I started doing art fairs because I thought I wanted to provide artists with another service that they wouldn't necessarily receive here.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, because I do think there's a huge intimidation factor to try and figure out how to do, you know, shows that are kind of outside your own country. And especially I think you went to sort of Korea and some pretty, you know, where the language is different, and that's even more intimidating to do on your own. So
yeah. Well, I mean, Korea came later. Initially I started with New York, which is a bit more familiar and actually just, you know, closer, for example. Yeah. So yeah, the starting of the art fairs was more around the idea of like providing artists, how can I provide something to artists that they wouldn't receive here?
Yeah.
And that was like, okay, let's enter another market. Let's give an international presence to Canadian artists. And also at the same time, you know, and also thinking, you know, if you're here with, I mean, and I did have some artists that were already represented, and it's like, rather than competing in their market that they already have a presence, why not do something else? And ironically, actually, it might seem counterintuitive, but doing art fairs also served the fact that I was working, because I could do the art fairs on my vacation.
Right.
I could use my vacation days.
You can compress it.
Exactly. You can compress it, because art fairs are mostly weekends. They're like 4-day weekends, right? Mm-hmm. So I could use my vacation days and my weekends to do like an art fair. So that made sense. So just from the logistics point of view, it made sense, right? Yeah. Yeah, so it, you know, and like I said, I started in New York and then did other parts of the United States, and then tested the water internationally in London. And I think Mexico. I actually forgot that I went to Mexico City and did art fair there in Mexico City.
That's pretty cool philosophy, though, to sort of travel. I mean, I always love this concept of like travel for art. Like, where do you want to travel to, and how can you do your art there? And it sounds like you've just taken that to the extreme.
Yeah, and an expensive extreme too.
Yeah,
it's not a cheap thing to. And then the unfortunate thing, though, actually, is because I was working and doing fairs, like, you actually never get to see these places that you go to, because you're like in and out. You're there, you set up, you do the fair, which means you're inside all day. It's finished, you get back on a plane and you come home. So you get like very little. So luckily, I mean, going to a place like New York, which I already knew, I didn't necessarily need to see that much of it. Doing fairs in London, which I also already knew, I didn't get to see that much of it. But, you know, I knew London and I have lots of friends there. But a place like Mexico City wouldn't necessarily see that much of it, you know, because you're just sort of in and out. But and then exploring Asia, so doing Hong Kong, Singapore, Korea.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I think. Yeah. Well, Sherry Hart was with you, I think, on those ones, because I remember at that time she had come back from that. We were sharing a studio together, and she was telling me some of the experiences.
Actually, we weren't together, but it was by sheer coincidence that she had done, I think, a fair in Asia, and I think I was going after or something like that. Our paths didn't cross there, but it was by sheer coincidence. Yeah,
that's cool. Small world.
Small world. I know. And Sherry's also very adventurous, you see. And sort of very good at sort of going out there and putting herself and her art out there. So it's no coincidence that she was actually, you know, exploring Asia at the time. Yeah, I think she just had her child her last child at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think she felt, I guess it was, and which I think is really smart, but also bold to just be able to kind of go, this is a time in your life where you can actually pick up, take your child with you and go,
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that's kind of cool.
So so the doing art fairs in Asia was, I mean, it's a bit of a challenge, and as you can imagine, it's logistically a little bit more challenging. And in Korea, there's a language issue, both in Singapore and Hong Kong. Not as much a language issue. Everyone speaks wonderful English in Hong Kong and Singapore also, but Korea is a little bit more of a challenge. And so in Korea, I had more or less sort of a partnership with someone that I worked with there, because you do need to have someone who speaks the language and sort of knows what's going on. Yeah. But I did enjoy very much showing art in Korea, because I actually like Korea. I like Koreans, and Koreans really, from my perspective, they seem to really look at art, and they're really interested in art. So it's a very sort of what seems like a deep engagement with art. Mm-hmm. Like they'll come to a booth and actually spend time, and you can tell that they're interested.
Yeah, I found that I was when I did Art Expo in New York, there was a woman beside me who ran a gallery that specialized in Korean artists, and I would say that she had really engaged long conversations with obviously a lot of Koreans were kind of attracted to the work, but it was really interesting because it wasn't kind of that fleeting conversations. They were really deep, and you could definitely tell that they were interested in understanding kind of the motivations behind the art and knowing about the artist. And she was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, Korean art, I think, if you can say there's Korean art, but the art that I saw at the time, and I used to go to Korea quite a bit, coming out of Korea is amazing. Just amazing, incredible, like a lot of abstract minimalist work, and just very well done. Like the technical aspect, the execution of art, just really amazing. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the beauty of getting to go to these places, is you also get to see what's being done in other parts of the world. And
did you find? Oh, sorry to interrupt, but did you find that the work that you were showing with your Canadian artists was kind of vastly different? Like, did it flow with the rest of the show, the work that was showing in the gallery, or was it very different based on the fact that it was international? Or, I mean, most of these shows are pretty international, I guess, anyway, right?
Yeah. And I think going to these shows, you get to see a range of art. So it's you're always seeing just such different, like the scope is always very wide, like just really. So I wouldn't say that there was anything that was necessarily recognized. Well, funnily enough, when I was in New York, I remember actually a lot of New Yorkers always come and say, "Oh my God, I love the art I love the Canadian booths." Actually, usually there are only two of us, but they often say, "Oh, I love the art from the Canadian. Whenever I see art that I like, it's in a Canadian booth," or something like that. Like just making comment. So obviously they were recognizing something that was different. Yeah. I might not have recognized it, but they were. And, I trust New Yorkers when they talk about art, because New Yorkers know their art. Yeah. Maybe in that regard. But also, I think maybe just in particular, like the art that I would bring is identifiably maybe a bit different, not because it's Canadian art per se, but just because of the group that I actually represent. Mm-hmm.
And so what's your criteria? Like, what are you looking for in terms of creating a unique perspective for Spence Gallery?
I think what I look for are artists that are doing, artists that are being quite innovative, and that sounds, sort of cliche because everyone is, I think of artists as innovators. Like that's what artists do. Like every time an artist sits and creates piece of work, they've innovated something. Like that's what they do.
Right.
So it might be a little bit redundant to say that, but I mean artists that are doing something, like trying to do something different, where there's a deliberate attempt to create a different process, a different method, a different style. And so that's one of the things. And then also, I guess my sensibility is, as a friend of mine who has a gallery, she's like, oh, you like serious art, Jo? I'm like, all your art is serious. And I'm like, I'm not so sure about that. But maybe,
I know, I think about Sherry Hart's work, and I'm like, it doesn't feel serious. It feels joyful and fun. And
yeah. So, but yeah, so I'm not sure what perspective that person used for, defining that. But I guess, and I do want to see artists that are not afraid to sort of like, challenge themselves and to challenge what they're doing. And also artists that are always evolving in their work. Like, they're trying, like even when, artists might have worked for, 10, 15, 20 years, and they've probably created their style, but within that, they're still evolving and trying to push themselves to explore something beyond what they're already doing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I had Laurie Scantos was on Talking Artist a while ago, and she was also in the same collective. And when I was showing with her, she was definitely doing the black and the teal paintings, and now she's kind of doing these really cool wall sculptures. And yet somehow there still seems to be a Laurie Scantos, I don't know, fingerprint on it, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, Laurie's a good example of an artist who is always evolving and challenging herself and wanting to go in not necessarily another direction, but sort of taking things a step, in another, just taking another step, another level. And at first I was like, oh my God, Laurie, what are you doing? What will I see next? What is this? And, and then just embracing it to say, oh, this is how this artist works. And as you say, you can see her in the work that she continues to do. You know what I mean? Like when you see a Laurie Scantos, like right now I have pieces that are from about like maybe three or four different series, and I can still recognize the hand of Laurie.
Absolutely. Yeah, her mark making is quite distinctive. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then you have someone like Mary Caravis, whose work is, where she's really doing so much, I think, with paper.
Oh, and, gorgeous work.
And just gorgeous work, very thoughtful, I cannot imagine how doing something, like I just cannot imagine, like I can't.
I can't imagine the patience. I know. I love watching her videos, and they're very therapeutic, right? Because it seems so methodical, and yet you know that she has a vision of what she's doing and how she's putting these gorgeous Nepalese papers together. Like it's just
exactly.
And she's lovely too.
And she's lovely too. And and that's the other thing. Speaking of lovely, I love having artists that are easy to work with and artists that you can have good relationships with. I mean, that really matters. That matters more so than, so many other things, right? Like you have to be able to work with an artist because you when you start working with an artist, you're signing up for a relationship, right? So
and life is short, so why spend it with people that are difficult or challenging or aren't really feeding your soul, kind of thing. Yeah, I found when I had a marketing firm, that was one of the greatest joys of being able to know that, like if you don't like working with someone, you can just fire the client. Like you have the ability to do that. And there's something very empowering in knowing that you have that kind of flexibility so that you can actually surround yourself with people that, are really positive people.
Yeah. And I have to say, knock on wood, because I know gallerists who've spoken of not having great relationships with artists or having challenges. And I have to say, I have wonderful artists that I have really good relationships with. And it's a joy, to work with the artists that I do work with. And I'm always, just looking forward to what they will do next. And I literally sit in anticipation when an artist says they have new work, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to see this. What will this be like? So that's cool. That's also another great thing to have when you're with a gallery, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Sure. And so I thought it was really cool that obviously with the gallery being closed during COVID, that you started doing online art auctions, which is another kind of interesting and different, I guess, a way of getting the word out there.
Yeah, well, I think I was just thinking, how can I engage people, especially those people that we would normally see at art fairs, because you can do the auction you can be anywhere and do that. And, that we wouldn't be able to do art fairs and haven't done any since last March. Just thinking, how can we engage people who are here and people who are overseas, and just engage anyone? And so the art fairs was an idea. And it was sort of like, not the art fair, sorry, the art auctions. And it was almost like the anti-art auction in a way, because auctions are usually like, not always, but you have like these really high priced items that are going for millions and or thousands or whatever. And I was like,
usually.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm just going to do auctions where everything is under $1,000.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah.
So it was like everything. Yeah. So someone can be like, I'll get that for $400 or $500. And, they were, I ended up engaging quite a few people, but it was more to, the goal was more to just sort of keep people sort of connected with the gallery, and also to get some artists some funds too, because, the gallery didn't really make any money on these auctions, but it was, to sort of support the artists and sort of keep a momentum going. In a way. I hope to continue doing that.
Sorry?
I knew you were going to ask. Yeah, I'm thinking that I will. And the other thing that I wanted to do with auctions is not showing works that artists would normally be showing in the gallery, not works that are just sort of on their web page, and so that there'd be something to draw people to it also. But also, like, let's say, for example, an artist is normally doing abstract work, but they had some figurative pieces that they'd done, would be like, let's put that in an auction, because it wouldn't be their normal sort of presentation, So it would be, okay, let's do something different. Let's show something different from this artist. So I may continue. If you have to have the pool of works that you can actually continue showing. But I actually quite enjoyed that. Like, that was a fun thing to do.
Yeah, it looked like it. Yeah. And it's also, it's interesting too, as an artist too, sometimes, like, I've been asked as well, or like, we're doing this works on paper show, like, can you do work on paper? And I'm like, well, normally I work on, birch panel. And so it kind of creates a fun and interesting challenge for the artist too, sometimes, to, try something different and see if it works.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and what, I wanted to do was to just have themed auctions. So we had an abstract, we had a figurative, then we had portraiture, and just basically would be going along in that theme. So it would if we continue doing it, it would be basically in that sort of vein of just doing themes and auctioning off about, I guess, 16 to 20 pieces, I think, something like that, 20 pieces, and having, I think 4 artists per auction and stuff like that. So yeah, I just find it an interesting, and also because of the price points, you can engage people who might not have $1,000 to spend on a piece of art, or $2,000 to spend on a piece of art.
Like, it's a good entry level. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you ever consider, like, I'm assuming those are with your existing stable of artists, do you ever, have you thought about opening that up to another, like an open call, or is your goal really just to kind of primarily focus on your artists?
Well, I have thought of that. I haven't done it, but I've thought of it. because I wanted to see, I wanted to, well, two things. I actually didn't want it to become too all-encompassing, as in taking up too much time and effort within the gallery. But at the same time, I thought, oh, there's some potential here. And like I said, and just an interesting feature to have. So I have thought of that. I haven't settled on a decision yet. You probably noticed that I haven't done one in a while, and I should be doing another one soon. But I was moving, and then I'm thinking about having an open house, and then, so just thinking of a few things. I may do one in August, who knows?
Well, that was kind of my next question, because, it's one thing to do all these fairs and stuff like that when you're kind of working full-time somewhere else. But now if you have your full-time gallery and to do auctions and to do the international fairs, that's a lot to juggle. Is that what your plan is, to continue on all three of those?
Yeah, because, one thing that I realized, so what happened, if I may go back a little bit in this history of the gallery. So after we had to leave Mirvish Village, then I went and we had a space over in the Junction for a while, and it was an appointment-only space. It was a second-floor space, and it actually served the gallery really well for doing international art fairs because we had a loading dock. No one gets excited about a loading dock, but when you're doing international art fairs with large crates, a loading dock is a gem. And so that really served that whole art fair process really, really well. And so when we were there, because it was on a second floor in a warehouse and it was appointment only, we really just focused on doing a lot more art fairs. And so coming here, leaving that space behind and coming here, I then thought, okay, this is a good time to fully do both. So you do art fairs and, having a storefront, it's like you are serving the public and you're visible and you're available. So that will sort of continue on even when you're doing art fairs. And that's just sort of the ongoing business of the gallery, is having a storefront and then doing art fairs. We may do fewer art fairs. And I mean, who knows what will happen to art fairs post-pandemic, like what they'll evolve as, you never know, right? So we may end up doing fewer art. I mean, right now that's the intention, to do fewer, just maybe do 4 to 6 per year or something. And
that's still a lot.
That is still, you're right. That's still a lot.
It's still a lot of work.
But if you're doing fairs that the work seems less, simply because you sort of know what you're doing, you know where you're going, that kind of thing, right? You know the process. And then with regard to the auctions, that would be like a nice, interesting, sort of path to carry on. And I'd have to see how to continue doing that and keeping it interesting, so that it's something that people want to keep, that you have, let's say you have 5 or 6 per year or something. Maybe get to that point where you're doing 5 or 6 per year and they're interesting, people are looking forward to it, and that kind of thing. That would be interesting. And of course, really cool. In order to do that, you have to have staff. Like, someone's supposed to be starting soon, and that will make a difference. It will feel a lot easier to sort of maintain those sort of 3 prongs.
Oh, that sounds exciting. That sounds amazing, actually. So believe it or not, we're actually almost at the end of our interview.
Wow.
I know. Crazy, isn't it?
Which is good, because my hand is now, sorry that the visual wasn't as good, because I couldn't keep the phone up in my little stand here.
No, it's great. It's totally fine. So I usually end my interviews with a question that if money and time were no option, what would your big hairy ass goal be?
Oh, wow. Money and time.
Yeah.
What would it be? And you're specifically with regard to the gallery, right? Of course.
Well, with anything. I mean, I guess it could be that you want to, sell everything and move to Alaska. Whatever. Usually it's
I would love Alaska. I love cold weather. Yeah, I mean, what would be? I would probably have a gallery. I would want to have outposts, gallery outposts in different places. I think would be great. And having having a presence at some significant art fairs maybe, and having outposts in, let's say, somewhere in the US, maybe in London.
That'd be cool.
Or have an outpost in London, have an outpost in New York or something. I don't know if New York is the place. Maybe Chicago is the place now.
Chicago's pretty good. I hear like Dallas and stuff is supposed to be a pretty big art center too.
Yeah. And then, having those outposts, maybe they're just sort of branches off Spence Gallery, or, where you have being able to show the artists from Toronto there, and, just sort of having that sort of broader spread of the art from Toronto and Canadian artists. Yeah, that's probably one of the things that would be,
That would be super fun.
Yeah, it would be super fun.
So why don't you tell everybody, just so we can kind of understand the address of where you're located, your Instagram handles, how to get a hold of you.
So the gallery is located, our brand new location. Sorry, I don't know why it's getting darker. Sorry.
That's good.
Our brand new location is at 106 Harbord Street, and that's Harbord and Roberts. Harbord and Spadina, actually. That's easy to find from there. We're by the University of Toronto. And our website is spencegallery.com. And you know what? I actually don't know what the Instagram.
I think it's Spence Gallery.
I think it's just Spence Gallery. Yeah. I think it's just Spence Gallery. There you go.
And so, is your gallery open now?
It is open. It's outside. It's rainy, wet, and empty. There's no one outside right now. It's like just the empty streets. And normally our hours are 11 to 6 on Tuesday to Saturday. And on Sunday, we're appointment only on Sunday, and we're closed on Mondays. Those are temporary hours. We're going to be just sort of observing how things unfold, and also just sort of seeing the neighborhood and how that, because we want to be integrated with the rest of the businesses here. So we'll see how that works. And then hopefully by the fall, we might have some real solid hours that we're like, okay, this is what we're sticking with for a while. But from now, it's 11 to 6, Tuesday to Saturday, and then appointments on Sunday. Closed on Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. Well, I look forward to, I was going to say, I look forward to coming to your gallery with an opening and having a glass of wine.
Yeah, and we are actually, there's a plan afoot to have an open house this month. But the date is not completely finalized yet. It will be in a couple of weeks, I think. And if not this month, then sometime in early August, it will happen.
That sounds fabulous. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been fascinating. I can't believe the hours slipped by so quickly. But good luck with all your endeavors, and I really look forward to following your journey because you've got some really cool stuff happening.
Thanks very much, Kate, and appreciate what you're doing. This is a great, fantastic idea.
It's fun. I enjoy it. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay.
Goodbye.
Right, bye-bye. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining. Coming up next, we've got Floyd Elzinga is going to be next week, followed by Steve Fretwell, who is a painter. So I look forward to seeing you guys all, and have a fabulous day. All right, bye-bye.